morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to look at special sets. Those sets that come in between the cracks. We have our regular sets, which are our February, May, August, November sets. Although, last couple of years it's been March, not February. But you know what I mean, close enough. But then we get the other sets. Most recently, we had Pokémon 151, Scarlet and Violet 151. It was a great set. Which, of course, got me thinking, well, alright then. If we're looking at these special sets, what are the best sets? Because, of course, Scarlet and Violet 151, not actually the most recent one we had. That came in September. In January, we got Paldean Fates, which was cool. But it feels weird to compare two sets. We really need to look at three. And it wasn't in the Scarlet and Violet era, admittedly. But right at the end of the Sword and Shield era, the very last set, after the last main set, we had Crown Zenith, or Crown Zenith, depending how you want to pronounce it. So I thought, you know what? That's three special sets, all of which have come around in just over a year, in 14 months. And really, they're all readily available. Like, you're not struggling to find any of these free sets at retail. I mean, if I'm looking around in the UK right now, Crown Zenith, readily available. Scarlet and Violet 151, readily available. Paldean Fates, readily available. So if all these sets have come out in just over a year, and all these sets are readily available, and they're all special sets, well, sounds like we should do some kind of comparative exercise now, shouldn't we? So we might as well go oldest to newest, because I don't know, that makes sense to me. Let's have a chat about Crown Zenith. This was a set which had a lot of cool stuff, and it's a set that I like very much indeed. All of these, incidentally, are very, very nice sets. They've all got a lot of cool stuff going for them, but you know, when I make these kind of videos, I do like to give like an actual answer, not a sitting on the fence answer, an actual answer. So what do we get from Crown Zenith? Well, remember, Crown Zenith is a set in two parts, because we've got the regular part, that's where you get stuff like the Pikachu, for instance, and then we've got the Galarian Gallery, and I will say that the regular set for Crown Zenith, not great. Like, we've got that Pikachu, which is awesome, but it's kind of like a $5 card. And we've got cards like Friends in Hisui and Friends in Sinnoh, but again, they're like $5 cards. The only card with any semblance of value whatsoever in the main set is a Lesser Sparkle. And honestly, even if we don't look at value, even if we just look at the set as a whole, it wasn't a particularly great main set, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, there was some cool stuff in there, but the cool stuff in there was really curiosities. Like, the fact that we actually got Regigigas VMAX was awesome. Look at the alternate art Greedent we got. That was fun. Radiant Eternatus and Radiant Charger Bug? Were they the obvious Radiant Pokemon? I'm going to say no. But it wasn't exactly an amazing set in that regard. But when you get to the Galarian Gallery, oh, things get very, very different indeed. We've got the gold cards. You know, even today, we've got the Giratina at about an $80 card and the Arceus at about a $60 card, which are awesome. You've got the Mewtwo as well, which is about a $45 card. And after all the gold and the Mewtwo, we've just got like a plethora of $20 cards. Leafeon and Glaceon. The legendary Beast Trio. Irida. And here's the thing, right? When you get to the Galarian Gallery, it's really not about value. And then don't get me wrong, there are plenty of cards in there that will attract a little bit of value, and that's lovely. It's not really what we're talking about. Things like the Hisuian Samurott, look at the artwork on that. Things like Hoopa by Okacheke, and yes, obviously, we know I'm horrendously biased. I don't care. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, look at a Simisear. Whether you love it or not, that's a very unique card. And then, of course, you've got all of the others, like the Ameliocarp Bibarel, you know, the non-EXs, which are all amazing. Hisuian Voltorb by Haganosuke, a particular favourite of mine. The Numel, which is actually Ditto. I mean, great great set, full of cool cards. Value-wise, there's a couple cards in there, but really, if we're being honest, it's just awesome. Now, if we look at 151, honestly, this is a nostalgia set. Like, the whole hook of the set is that it includes all of the original 151 Pokemon, and that's it. There are no non-Gen 1 Pokemon in the set, but all the Gen 1 Pokemon are in the set. If you're a Gen 1 fanboy, if you've been around since the beginning, you're probably going to look at this set a lot. And I know everybody loves Gen 1, don't get me wrong, but I do still think that real Gen 1 fanboys, and you don't have to have been there since the beginning, just huge fanboys of Gen 1, are going to get more out of this than your average person. I do believe. Quite strongly. And it is an amazing set. Now, obviously here we do have a special illustration rare Charizard, so if you're looking for value, this is outpacing anything we see in Crown Zenith. It was just about $100 card, honestly. And then you've got stuff like the Blastoise at about $50, and then you've got the Venusaur at about $40, and then it does start to go down from there. But it's a set with some decent cards in, value-wise. It's not amazing, but you have at least got the Charizard in there, which is pretty cool. But then you've got stuff like the Blastoise line, where they're all done by Mitsuhiro or Arita, and they all match quite nicely, which is redonkulous. You've got things like Erica's Invitation, which, firstly, great card. Secondly, that's hinting back at a really old card that old school TCG nerds are going to absolutely love. It gave us a chance to have weird Gen 1 Pokemon getting EXs like Wigglytuff and Arbok, which really should not have been top of your list to get EXs, honestly. But they get them. And it's that kind of set. It is a nostalgia-built set. Yes, the special illustration rares and illustration rares are absolutely lovely. Look at the Poliwhirl. And incidentally, back in the original Gen 1, if you were around at the time, you will remember Poliwhirl was in everything. Pokemon were really, really trying to push Poliwhirl as a mascot. They failed, but the fact that they actually went and tried it and then gave... I see what they're doing with the illustration rare for Poliwhirl. I see it. Also amazing. When I was in Japan, I went out in the evening in a legitimate monsoon just so I could stand on a Japanese street in the dark and recreate this, in the rain of course, and recreate this image of Poliwhirl. It was fun. Gen 1, honestly, 151 really depends on how much you love Gen 1. If you love Gen 1, this is going to be the best set on the list. If you don't love Gen 1 so much, or you're a fan of all generations, or you don't have that love or nostalgia for Gen 1, it's a great set, but it's not going to set the world on fire. So what about Paldean Fates, the most recent of them? And of course, one of the big things, straight away when Paldean Fates was revealed, we saw they've gone back to shiny Pokemon. Not everybody was thrilled that they'd gone back to shiny Pokemon. And there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of shiny Pokemon. Well over 100. So it's like, if you love your shiny Pokemon, this set is going to be your dream set, but not everybody does. Like, just in the set, normally there's 120 regular shiny Pokemon, and then a bunch of promos as well, and that is a majority of the big stuff. Now, there were a few EXs, honestly not that many. There was only 12 actual EXs in the set, and a lot of them weren't heavy hitters. Sure, there's Mew and Gardevoir, but that's about it. And even these were just shiny versions of the full arts we'd already had. And then they had illustration rares, but it was literally just 3 of them. And then there's a few special illustration rares, and you got stuff like the Charizard and the Mew that are genuinely special, and the Io and the Penny. And I think the art on the Clive is amazing, but that's basically it. The number of these was very, very few. This set was largely about shiny Pokemon. Now, if we have a look at value, again, we do have a Charizard in here. So that means that there is a bit of value to be had. That Charizard is just over $100. The Mew is sitting at about $75. The Gardevoir is about $50. Then there's a few other cards that are like $40 or below. It is the newer set on the list, but value-wise, certainly at the top end, this is the number one set. If you're looking for value in the cards that you can pull, this is outpacing the other two. Just putting that out there. This is the one. But this set really depends on how much you like shiny Pokemon. In terms of the main set was very kind of, like there's a Spaffra EX. If you were waiting for that, not sure anybody was, but just in case you were. And like, there's a new Great Tusk. Woo. Now, what they did do, it's really cool, they did a bunch of reprints. Like, they reprinted Charizard EX and just completely tanked the value of that card, which was very nice. And, they put stuff Electric Generator and Iono in there. Good cards being reprinted. But the main set was some Japanese promos and reprints. Really, most of the hits were shiny Pokemon. And then at the end, there were some very cool cards, but they were few and far between. So where do we come down then if we're trying to give an answer to which of these sets was the best? Well, we can play a bit of a what-if game. If you are a Gen 1 fanboy, it's Pokemon 151, like no question. If you are a fan of the shiny Pokemon, then it's absolutely going to be Paldean Fates. If you're looking for value in terms of the cards that you can pull and getting big hits, it's Paldean Fates. In a vacuum, I think it's Crown Zenith. None of the main sets of this are particularly good, but Crown Zenith had enough wacky things that makes me really love it. In terms of the number of extra cool things, Crown Zenith had more than the others, again, unless you're counting the shiny Pokemon. So there's lots of caveats here. If you're into Gen 1, go 151. If you're into shiny Pokemon, go Paldean Fates. But actually, I think if you put them all side by side in a bit of a vacuum, I think Crown Zenith is probably the best set of the three. For me, personally, it's 151. No argument there at all. For me, it's 151. But again, looking in a vacuum, trying to look objectively, I think it might be Crown Zenith. And as a side note, as we finish here, remember Crown Zenith has been out for a while at this point. And it's still pretty readily available. It won't be forever. There is going to come a point in the not too distant future where all of a sudden, it's just not there. It's not available. And when that day comes, I think a lot of you are going to wish you'd picked it up when you had the chance. For now, I want to hear from you guys. I want a definitive answer. I want to know which of these you're loving. I want to know which of these cards you picked up. I want to know which set is your favourite. I want to know anything you want to tell me. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And get shout-outs on the channel like the lovely Jelena Renji, who's been a supporter of ours for a long time, is a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.